Hi, everybody. Today, I have the honor to meet one of my heroes, one of the people that has inspired me to not only make music, but to buy a shitload of gear. Thanks to this man, I bought the original MPC, I bought the Machina MK3, the SP404. I am so happy to meet you. I'm so happy that you agreed to be here. Big welcome to Mr. Accurate Beats. Welcome, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate that. Being invited to things like this is always nice and fun and cool.
If I keep on interviewing Swedish people, I think I might either have to move to Sweden or maybe I'll have to learn Swedish.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Just come here anytime.
First thing I'd really love to talk to you about is that you've done something lately that has been the dream of probably anyone who has started making music, and that is making your own individual studio outside of the house, because most of us either have a corner in the living room, or if we're lucky enough, we get a whole room for ourselves. But the big dream, that space outside of your home where, your sacred spot. How's that expectation versus reality going up to now?
Well, it's kind of complicated actually, but I'm really happy. I'm in that studio right now, this separate studio space. That's the one I'm in right now. And I'm really happy about the studio and I'm excited about having it. But it kind of hit me that to have a studio like this, it would make sense if I made music and videos and stuff full time. But I'm also a dad and I have a social life and I have a day job that I work three days a week at my day job. So I just find myself not being able to go here as much as I kind of wanted to, or as I thought I would, which kind of leads me into ending this contract and moving to a new house and setting up a studio space in the basement in my new house instead. And I think that makes sense for me. Doing this thing was cool and awesome, and it's been great just for the few months that I've had it. But yeah, in the long run, I don't think this makes sense for me, but maybe for a lot of people.
Yeah. Do you find it it gets in the way of your creativity? Because I've often thought about, going out and, doing a separate studio, but I found that most of the time, and especially being a dad, the times where you can actually sit down and make music is way in the night when all the kids are sleeping and, everybody just stops. So having to go to a separate place, I think would kind of get in the way of all that maybe.
Yeah, and I kind of had my doubts about this entire thing before I got it, thinking just like that it's not going to be possible to go here. And I mean, the studio space is about 5 minutes from my home, so it's nothing to talk about. I can walk here in 7 minutes or something. But the thing that matters to me and my creative output, both in terms of videos, but mostly for beat making and creating music, is that I need to be able to do it whenever inspiration hits, And that's just not possible, even though it's just 5 minutes away somehow. That's it's been a little bit disappointing, to be honest, but that's just life, I guess. But the thing is, if I'm working on a specific project, like a video review or something like that, it makes total sense to go here and dedicate time to work on it. But that whole thing about learning a new piece of gear or exploring music, I need to do that, as you said, at night or in the weekends, in the middle of the night, and just be creative like that. So going here, yeah, it's awesome whenever I get to be here, but it's just not as often as I hoped,
That's kind of refreshing because, all of us have that fantasy, of that, the dream space, the dream studio. And it's kind of strange because when you start growing up, you realize that some of your dreams aren't as maybe, practical or feasible.
Yeah.
And I totally relate to what you're saying because most of the music that I make, I'd say the good songs that I've made or the music that I'm proud of is usually stuff that comes along I stumble upon it when maybe I'm just doodling around, I have 5 minutes before I go to work and maybe I'll set up a synth and oh man, this sounds great. But whenever I sit down purposefully, just okay, I'm going to write my song, it's just so much harder. It doesn't feel as fluid.
Exactly. And my specific way of making music has so much to do with exploring samples and sounds and spending a lot of time editing. That only comes whenever I want to do it. That has to come from the heart. That has to come from the creative endeavor that I'm in. So going to the studio, setting my mind to, yeah, I'm going to be creative now, that just hasn't worked out because that's not a part of my creative output somehow. You always learn from things. So even though this was, again, kind of a disappointment, yeah, I've actually really learned something about it. And you work from home in your studio, that's at your house, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like I've often thought about it, and beyond the obvious problem about the cost of having a separate space. What happens when I want to be creative right now? When I have an idea, like for example,
Yeah.
something like the Octatrack that takes some time to set up and everything, and it's way over there in an office where I can't reach it right now. And by the time that I get to it, I'll probably have forgotten what I want to do with it in the first place. So
Yeah.
kind of like the missed opportunity of having your instrument somewhere else.
Yeah, and to me, everything comes like as one big package somehow. Sure, I can make beats on just an MPC and nothing else, but the whole thing about having gear and having access to instruments is to have access to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if I bring the MPC at home, then of course I'm gonna like be stuck in this mindset of wanting to sample something from the Jupiter or whatever, and then I can't do that, and then it becomes like this thing, and I just focus on the wrong thing,
Yeah, I'm so happy that it's not just me. For example, I usually love portable synths, and I take them to work with me. My day job, I used to have the OP1 or maybe like the Dirty Wave M8. As soon as I start making a song, I'm like, man, I could really love a Polybrute sample right now.
Yeah.
And something that I have no way of getting. So, and I have my computer with me, so like I could fire up, I don't know, Pigments or I don't know, whatever Diva. But it's like, no, I need the Polybrute for this.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same, and when you have kind of set your mind to that place, then it's easy to get stuck there. I'm not saying that all the gear is necessary to be able to make music, but somehow I always get stuck in, I want to sample this piece of vinyl, and then I have the turntable over here and not at home. And, if I kind of set my mind to getting a studio space, I feel like I owe to myself to actually make music here. Not at home, not on my iPad or not on the OP1 in the bed or whatever. I want to be here, and if I can't be here, it becomes this whole like negative spiral of not being able to do whatever I want, and then I get stuck like scrolling on Instagram or whatever instead, which is always a poison.
Absolute doom scrolling. I've been there. I've been there. But like, for example, for you, has the pressure contributed to like blocking your creativity? For me, I took the first semester of this year. I tried to go like not full YouTube, but I quit half of my day job. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do half YouTube and half my day job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I think I jumped the gun a bit. I was a bit too optimistic. And the thing is, I pressured myself way too much. And I found that I was having a hard time coming up with videos or music or whatever because I was so worried that now I had this economic responsibility now. I got inside my own head and I had to like turn back a bit. So not now like 80-20. But like, how about you? Like having a different studio, having to pay for a different space. Did that contribute or was that like a negative in terms of creativity?
No. Having the space itself, it's super affordable actually to have this space. And it's not like that brings a lot of like anxiety to stuff in terms of finances. Not at all. But I've done kind of the same thing as it sounds like you did. Now I work 60-40, so 60 on my day job, 40 here, I guess. But I'm also trying really hard not to think about myself as a 40% YouTuber, because YouTube isn't everything I do in here. I'm making music, I'm releasing, everything on YouTube, but I'm also trying to, in 2023, I'm gonna start like putting more time into my Patreon. And I'm gonna try to book myself for like doing live in real life workshops with people at like places that do that kind of stuff, like culture
That's
houses
awesome.
and stuff that we have in Sweden. So that's gonna be a part of the income too. Yeah. So everything like combines into me being some type of freelancer in the media music space. It's not all YouTube, because if I think about myself like a YouTuber, then I get anxious about it and then it becomes problematic. And I really do a lot to try to avoid any type of pressure like that when it comes to anything, because that just doesn't serve a purpose in my life. I'm actually thinking about 2023, when I'm getting rid of the studio and getting my new house and the studio space there, the plan is actually to quit my day job totally and just do these kinds of freelancing, YouTubing kind of stuff full time.
That's awesome, dude. Congratulations, man.
Thank you,
That's the
thank
dream.
you. Since we're moving to a new house, it's going to be cheaper to live there, basically. So I could afford to live like the poor life of an artist a few years and just give this thing a try.
Yeah. I mean, like it's now or never, man. That's how I think of it.
Yeah, I think we're the same age, you and I, and having like kids and family and stuff, and all the stuff I've been through, it feels like I kind of need to focus on the stuff that makes me happy and the things that I think I could make a living out of. So I think it makes sense for me.
I remember hearing something like on a podcast about, financial independence and everything. And the guy was like, what do you think is more risky? Taking this chance that might not work, but you can always end up where you were before. You can always go back to your day job. Or is it riskier to like not take the chance and spend your whole life wondering, man, what would have happened if I would have just, taken my shot? You fall down sometimes, and sometimes it gets rough, and sometimes it gets hard. We move forward and we learn. So I think that's really cool, man. Congrats, man. That's seriously.
Thanks. And I'm just realizing that everything is a balance. Just because we had this kind of expensive apartment and I had my day job and my girlfriend too, and we got used to living like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that for the rest of your life. I can do this crazy YouTube, social media, whatever, plus the live workshops and stuff. And if it doesn't work out, I can always fall back on my education and go back to like a normal day job too. But now feels like the right time for me to do this, because if I don't do this now, when we're lowering like the expenses of living and all that stuff, when should I do this? When am I supposed to? Yeah. And it feels like it's now or never, basically.
When I see you turning tables, I have no idea how the hell it works, how you got there. How did you get started? Where did you learn how to do that?
Well, I guess people come from different types of backgrounds, I guess. And in my world of like, hip hop kind of beat making, scratching and all that stuff, I am really, really bad at all that kind of stuff when it comes to the turntable. I am. Seriously, for real. It's not even me trying to be humble or whatever. I'm a really bad scratch DJ, for sure.
We can't tell. We can't tell. Don't worry.
No, but I don't want to be negative, but that's also maybe a specific kind of thing that everyone doesn't know a lot about. So then it becomes kind of easy to make it sound good and fool people like you into thinking I know what I'm doing. But I'm honest, because the fact of the matter is that if like a good turntable scratch DJ hears me scratching, it's laughable, almost. I'm getting better at it, but I'm not a good scratch DJ, and people think that sometimes and ask me questions like this, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just doing the basic scratches, and I'm trying to, and I'm not even ashamed of it, because I like the sound of scratching. I like the sound of my scratching, the basic scratch stuff. But if you're asking like a proper turntable DJ, yeah, Accurate Beats, he sucks at scratching. That is what it is.
I think that there's an interesting point there. Have you heard of the imposter syndrome? Have you heard about that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's what I live by.
Whenever people like ask me like, oh, how do you know so much about synths? Or, oh, you play the piano. And I'm like, no, wait up. I really have no idea what I'm doing.
Me neither.
I just, I enjoy these things and I play stuff that sounds good. And the synths, I try to find the sounds that I love. But like whenever I see like, I don't know, loop hop or the great sonic state, I'm like, dude, these people know.
Yeah.
And hearing you right now makes me wonder if maybe just everybody thinks that they suck, and we're all just living in the same perspective.
Yeah, in some way I think you're right, but also I can say when it comes to like instruments like pianos and keyboards and basses and whatever, I don't really know what I'm doing there either, and I'm not even considering myself to be a good producer. I'm a somewhat decent beat maker, but I'm not good at any of these things like in a vacuum, if that's even a thing to say in English. But if I can combine all the stuff that I kind of know, it becomes something decent or even good sometimes. But I mean, put me in front of a keyboard, I don't really know what I'm doing, but allow me to combine that keyboard with a bass line and some drums, some scratches, and some sound design and stuff, then it becomes this whole thing. I've actually had this plan for a couple of years to make a video called The Master of Nothing, because that's kind of how I see myself. I'm decently good at some of the different things, and then I have the capacity to like put that into a package that sounds decent. But one single thing at a time, it's I see my music making as I'm making a collage basically of sounds. And then I don't need to be a good scratch DJ to make the scratching sound cool. I don't need to be a good keyboard player to make the keyboard thing sound cool. And all I really want is to make stuff sound cool.
This is really refreshing, especially like for me, dude. I swear, you're one of my musical heroes. I just love the way you make beats.
Ah, come on.
Seriously, dude. I'm a fan. I'm gonna make you uncomfortable right now.
Okay. Thank you.
As a viewer, you usually think, oh, this guy just made an amazing beat in just like 5 minutes. Wow, I wish I was that talented. So hearing you say that is just really cool because it relieves lots of the pressure, because you think that you have to be a great keyboardist, you have to be a great finger drummer, and maybe it's just like you said, it's knowing enough about each one of those aspects to make the whole thing sound good.
Yeah, that's key to me, definitely. But I'm also like I'm stupid in some ways, because if I hear someone like shredding on guitar, that might be like playing a scale up and down decently fast, and that's impressive to me because I don't know it myself.
Yeah,
that's cool to me. And like artists and painters and tattoo artists and stuff like that, everything they do is super impressive to me. But in that realm of like interest, maybe that person is kind of bad at it compared to like the best ones. And to me, like it also has a lot to do with confidence. Like, I'm proud of what I do, and I'm a fan of my own music. I'm not ashamed of listening to my own tracks. I think I'm kind of good at what I do, but put me in front of a piano or a guitar, even worse, it's not gonna be, anything.
But I think that's also a good point, because sometimes we like focus too much and maybe waste a lot of time learning something that maybe isn't that essential to the whole process. Like I remember, like especially at the beginning, I spent so much time learning about mastering, mixing, EQing, and in the end, like for example with synths, most of them, the patch already comes like pretty much EQ'd. Like you don't. If you have a bass, it's gonna be bassy. If you have a lead, it already comes like the preset already comes like prepackaged.
Yeah.
So you should learn a bit about that. But obsessing over one thing maybe isn't that, if it's not your purpose. Unless you want to be an audio engineer or something like that. Sometimes maybe it's better to focus on different things so you can do more. Like for example, I grabbed the bass guitar at the beginning of the year, and it's been really fun. And started scales and stuff. But I don't have the objective of becoming, the next bass rock star, and that also relieves a lot of the pressure. So I enjoy it more, knowing that I'm going to do like these simple melodies, and maybe with time I'll get better. But it's not this pressure that, oh man, I suck at bass, because I do.
Yeah, and I almost made this entire thing into like a thing to live by when it comes to creative work in general. That even if I had the time to learn how to properly play pretty much everything on the keyboard, a part of me I don't even want to learn more, because I'm great at what I do to the extent where I'm at right now. It doesn't need to be more complicated, because if I make it more complicated, I'm terrified that that's going to affect my creativity and my output in a negative way. Kind of doesn't make sense, but in one way it kind of does, because I work a lot with samples, right? I sample from vinyl and I just cut it up in Machine or an MPC or whatever. And sometimes when I'm trying to find like fitting chords and notes and stuff to that, this is a few years ago, but I became kind of like disappointed at myself when I found samples and chopped things up, and then it became like two chords playing between A minor and F, A minor, F. And then I felt like, yeah, what kind of a musician am I? I'm making beats in A minor and F back and forth. There's a psychology to that sometimes, somehow, that I feel like, yeah, this is too basic. But if I didn't even know the chords, and if I didn't try to put it on the piano, I wouldn't even think about that. I would just listen to it and be happy. And then I'm second guessing myself because it's too simple. Come on, who cares about that, really? It sounded decent before, and it sounds the same now, even though I know it's just two chords. And making it too complicated kind of makes it not as fun. Does that even make sense? I don't know. That's just how I think about it.
Dude, absolutely. It's weird because like the other day I was walking my dogs and I had just that same thought process that I don't know, maybe it's because social media shows us so many talented people because like, you know, you go like 1 second on Instagram, there's Jay Black finger drumming the hell out of his MPC and you're like,
Yeah.
I could never get there. I can't do that. And that kind of starts intimidating you and you're like, wait a minute, should I even try, or is my stuff too basic? Some of the favorite songs that I've made either on the piano or on the guitar are 4 chords in, you know, very typical progression. There's nothing fancy about it,
Right.
but they're really heartfelt and I really like them to this day. And you're like, did they need to be more complicated than that? No, they didn't. So why am I second guessing that right now? I think I blame Instagram.
Yeah, that's true to some extent, of course. But also, when I find myself doing stuff that's too simple nowadays, I'm just turning my brain off and just turning my ears on and listening to the music. And if I think it's good, it's good. It doesn't matter how complicated or how advanced or whatever it is. And I mean, that goes for the scratching stuff as well. Like someone like you says that I'm great at scratching. I know that I'm not, but I make it sound decent in the videos. And I think that's cool. I'm proud of that. I don't need to be the best scratch DJ ever, but I can do what I do. And no one can take that away from me, even though you might be a better scratch DJ. That doesn't matter because I know all these different things. This is what I do. Scratching is just a tiny, tiny part of it.
Exactly. I just thought of a great example of that. You know, I saw this special on Ringo Starr. You have like these great drummers. I remember there's like Dave Grohl and there's like the Chad from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And they were like, this guy didn't make the most complex beats, but he is the master of feel, of groove, you know?
Huh.
The feeling of his beats, it's out of this world. So I think that there's a huge part of the emotion and the feeling that you give your music, which transcends whatever complexity it has. And I certainly feel that like when I'm playing the keys, as I said before, I'm not a big piano player, but I try to like infuse it with as much emotion as I can, and I think it sounds pretty good. And that's enough. It should be enough.
I think it is enough. If you can listen back to it and be proud of your work, it's more than enough. And being like a person on YouTube and whatever, having somewhat of an audience that appreciates your work, that speaks volumes of what you're capable of. You can't, I mean, comparing yourself to like a keyboard player, that doesn't make sense. And for me to like compare myself to a proper scratch DJ doesn't make sense. To Jay Black for finger drumming, I do a little bit of finger drumming. I'm not very good at that either, but I make it work. And to me, like that's my whole like creative and expertise or whatever. But that's what I'm trying to do. I know enough about a lot of things to make it work. It doesn't always needs to be like super fantastic, amazing, the best stuff you've ever heard. It transmits a feeling I have, an emotion and a vibe, and that's what creativity is to me. Like being super technical about anything, that's being technical and being skilled. My skill is beat making, and beat making is everything combined into one. And that's more important to me than anything else.
Well said, dude. Well said.
I keep repeating myself, but I think this is kind of important. A lot of people are scared to be creative because it's too difficult, and people are scared to mix and master the tracks because there are some rules to follow. Sure, there are, but you don't have to adapt to every single rule and do anything by the book at all. It's creativity. You're supposed to be free, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like one of my projects, I actually like hired an audio engineer, and he was like, mixing and mastering, and I was like, I had zero confidence in my own mixing skills and mastering skills. So I brought these like stems, and I was like, or this mix, I don't know. I'm like, what do you think of the mix that I made? You know, I think it sounds pretty good, but can you EQ it or anything? And I always remember what he said. He said, if it sounds good, it is good. Forget about the graph.
100%. 100%. And that's why I feel like working with machine and NPCs and stuff, that puts me more in the mindset of listening to what I do instead of watching like meters and numbers and stuff. The tactile feeling of just making something, being outside of the box, outside of the numbers, outside of that entire realm of just having to like see stuff that you can compare to something else. To me, that's poisonous. That's dangerous. I need to be in the zone, creating something, listening, and just not thinking too much about it. That's the next process of mixing. And then I could just tweak things a little bit, but if it's good enough, it's good enough.
I think that what you just said is the big difference. Like every time I grab Ableton, I find myself looking at the numbers, looking at the EQ, and seeing out of all of my options which one I'm going to use. And instead, when I'm using something like the MPC or the Roland Phantom, it's really crazy how fast you can go if you have limited options. And you're like, okay, now I need a piano, and okay, there's the piano. And now I need a drum, and here's a drum. And you're not thinking, you know, about panning and mixing, and that comes later on. But it gets in the way, and you know, just like that, you lose the idea, and it's gone, and it's gone.
Yeah, and I think that's dangerous. And now we're talking again about like comparing yourself to others. And I mean, sure, it makes sense to like reference your mix of a finished track to something else and just see if it's in the ballpark in the same like volume or whatever. That kind of makes sense. But do that for 5 or 10 minutes. Don't be stuck at working like that for hours and hours. And normally for my beats that I post on YouTube and whatever, my drum sounds sometimes I second guess myself like after the video is posted and I'm realizing that, hey, that snare is way too loud in the mix. And I don't even want to go back and fix it because the product is already finished with too loud of a snare drum. And no one's going to kill me for that. We can't keep up messing about with our minds like that and like forcing us to do things that doesn't come natural for us. I'll make music how I make music, and I think it sounds good. That's the end of it.
Absolutely. You know, it's kind of strange because I've been adopting the same thought process like for the last few months, because like before I would worry a lot, you know, that the mixing wasn't right or the volumes weren't set. And then I started thinking about how I consume music in, you know, YouTube or Instagram. I'm not really worried about that stuff. You know, I'm not going to be watching Red Bean's recording and be like, okay, this OP1 jam is pretty nice, but the piano's a bit loud. I'm not thinking about that,
No,
you know?
no, never.
You're just enjoying the process and you're enjoying the music. So like when I've started posting recently, I'm just like, does it sound good? Did I enjoy making it? Okay, that's enough. Maybe I'll just like figure out if it's clipping or if it's, you know, too boomy or whatever, but minimal stuff, because in the end, that's precious time that you're wasting that no one's going to really benefit from it.
Yeah, and maybe that's us talking as like older guys who's been doing this for a few years by now. But I mean, when I started out making beats, I could spend hours in my sample libraries just looking for the right kick drum. And today, there's no such thing as a right kick drum. It's crazy how much time you spend like that. And maybe because we have spent all that time, we're realizing that you have to like make faster decisions and, you know, be more immediate with your stuff. Maybe that's necessary to go through that process. But now when I don't think like that anymore, it's just a lot freer and a lot easier to create when I'm not second guessing each and every single choice I make.
Yeah.
Because that just takes time and it becomes a chore and it becomes, you know, the opposite of creative.
This is strange because like what you're saying really resonates a lot. And I want to see if you agree with this. I feel like I've had like two best moments of music making. The first was when I just started out, when I was so bad at everything that I really didn't care what people thought. And I just, I was just free, and I made some stuff that I'm really proud of. And then I started going into the spiral of, okay, now I'm going to have to do this like a pro, and, like really worry about, am I using all the highs? Am I using all the low? Is my spectrum filled up? And I started making really crappy music, like really, really bad. And now I feel like I'm going, I went over the hill, and I'm going back into like what we're saying right now. That's like, okay, does it sound good to me? I don't worry that much about, is the EQ perfect, is the panning perfect, is the mastering perfect? Do you think, like, does that happen to most people? Did it happen to you?
Exactly the same. Exactly the same thing. And on top of that, I had a few years actually where I kind of tried to find my sound. And now I've realized that there's no such thing as my sound. I make what I make, and it normally sounds kind of similar, so that's my sound. But developing a sound of your own and like my fingerprint for music, I've made so much crappy music that doesn't sound like the stuff I make today. And I thought like, yeah, I'm this guy who's gonna make hip hop beats, but it's gonna be super electronic and super modern. I thought like that for years, just setting my mind to that for some reason. And nowadays, I'm like the opposite of that. And to me, that whole thing about second guessing yourself and trying to go for a certain type of sound, go for a certain type of skill, to me, nothing like that makes sense anymore. And maybe that's because, again, we're a little bit older. But what you're saying totally resonates 100%. I'm exactly the same.
Where does the song process start for you? Like, for me, it's usually I grab the guitar or a piano, and I just, start feeling away, and the tune kind of reveals itself to me. I know that you're mostly sample based. How does the inspiration come to you?
I try to think about my beat making process as in two different lanes, basically. One is of course sample based, and that's the stuff I do the most. But then I also love synthesizers and drum machines and figuring out stuff from start without samples. So that's basically two different ways I have to work in. And the path with synthesizers and instruments is normally a little bit more difficult for me because my sample-based workflow comes really naturally for me because I've done it for so many years. But a lot of inspiration for beats comes from the sample itself, actually. Even if I mangle the sample the first thing I do and make it totally indistinguishable from the original, it still kind of sparks some kind of creative spark, and things just happen. It's kind of magical when you're learning to use samples the efficient way. When it comes to samples, the sample itself has the inspiration from the get-go. And then, I fiddle around with the sample and I make it into something new, and then I figure out some sort of pattern, I play a drum loop, and I make things just come together, and then add bits and pieces to it. That's the process, basically.
That's awesome, dude. Seriously, like for us watching, it's really fun. You've been using the MPC, the machine, and everything. You know that the keys was kind of controversial, with all the Ben Jordan stuff going on and everything.
Oh yeah, I know.
How about you? Like, what was your experience? Because like you're a hardcore MPC user, and like I made a little video about it. I kind of thought that the MPC keys could have been its own like line, like a workstation with some MPC features, like the Force. It's its own line. I have nothing against it, and probably will try to, work with it sometime in the future. But how about you? Like, how was your experience, especially coming with your background?
I think the answer here is kind of straightforward, actually. The MPC Key 61 is an MPC, and to me, it's just as powerful and just as good as the MPC Live 2 or my MPC 1 or whatever. It's an MPC plus a keyboard and a little bit more stuff on the back. But I'm not using my MPCs like Ben Jordan uses his MPC, like the most advanced, high quality instruments put on 4 tracks and just go ham. I use a lot of samples, and I use a lot of drums, and I use some effects here and there on some instruments, sure. But if I wanted something that it sounds like Ben Jordan is looking for, I wouldn't go for the MPC Live. If you want an MPC and you want the keyboard and you want some more connectivity, it's pretty much the perfect device for someone like me. Because I do that thing when I'm chopping samples and I'm putting drums on it and then like a bass line and then I find the chords and I combine stuff, the MPC works flawlessly for me. But I'm not trying to go for the most like advanced things that it can do, because I know there are limitations with that sort of stuff.
I had the same feeling. The keys has like 4 GB of RAM. Did you feel the difference, or was it not that much?
Yeah, when you load up like the proper multi-layered sampled instruments, you can definitely, it's easier to hit the roof on the other MPCs than on that one. Sure. Again, that's not really how I use it, so I don't hit that kind of limit a lot even with my MPC 1. Because that's not my workflow. And we have to take into consideration that Akai makes MPCs. And just because the Key 61 exists doesn't mean that Akai now makes super high quality workstations. It's not comparable like that. It's a different category. It's not like a montage. It's not like, it's not comparable. And it's not supposed to be. At least not to me, but I guess I'm a fanboy for MPCs in general.
No, I feel the same way. I feel the same. I said as much in my video. I feel the same way. It's a different heritage. It's a different line, and they have different purposes. And if you use it for the purpose that it's made, it's going to be great. I think at least.
Yeah, it's been great to me. Sure, I've seen a couple of bugs here and there, but I go through so much gear on a yearly basis or whatever. So like a few bugs here and there, I can work around them. I can make stuff work in a different way. That's not the end of the world. That's at least not to me.
No, absolutely. Like for me, like the measurement is, am I enjoying my time? Because like every single piece of gear I had has a few flaws, has a few bugs. And to me, at least, if it doesn't get into the way of my process, if it doesn't get into the way of, oh, I have to stop working and I can't, restart working in a long time unless I fix this bug, which is kind of the reason I stopped using DAWs, then, it's okay. Like in the DAW, like I would get stuck because I don't know, there was a function that I didn't remember how to use, so I had to Google, how to zoom into the grid, something like that, and that would kill everything. That would just kill everything.
That sucks. You don't want to be in there.
Yeah. That's why I appreciate DAW so much, because usually it's a lot simpler, and once you get into the workflow, whatever small gear you're using, you can just manage.
Yeah, and I think one thing that really deserves to be said about the MPC keys is that like the workflow, the alignment of everything is so awesome to use. Everything just sits in the right place, and the whole, because it's angled, you have the keys like that, and then you have the angle for the top. It makes so much sense, and it's so comfortable to work on, and the workflow just becomes so fluid and natural. I find myself making beats on the Key 61, even though I'm not always using the keyboard. I'm using the pads like a normal MPC, but it's just comfortable to work on. Something about the form factor of it just makes a ton of sense.
I think it does make, it makes a huge difference. I used to have the MPC X, and I sold it to buy the Live 2, so I could like size down. And what I really missed, I thought I was going to miss the rotary knobs, the 16 with the LEDs, and that I did miss. But what I really missed was the tilting screen, because like the position on the MPC, it's flat on the desk. That's what really gets uncomfortable. So I really get what you're saying. I think that the format on the MPC keys looks pretty cool.
Yeah, and also now we're getting into the details here, but also the buttons of it. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of the buttons themselves on the Live 2 compared to the MPC 1. That's just my go-to. I like that one a lot more when it comes to the feeling of the buttons and like navigating the system. And the Key 61 is even better because it has like similar buttons to the machine instead. And it doesn't take as much force to press it as it does on the Live 2. Maybe that's just me, but it makes a big difference in my workflow because I'm trying to be as quick as possible to get my ideas out there.
I want to talk to you a little bit about a personal issue. And first of all, you've been a huge inspiration, and there's something that you might not know about this, because when you see somebody on YouTube or on a social platform, it's weird because you think they can't get hurt or they can't get diseases, or they're kind of immune to everything in real life. So when you come out and go like, okay guys, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be here for a while because I have a brain tumor, that experience was, it must have been terrible.
It sucked big time, but I also kind of quickly made the decision to share this on YouTube because that's where I have people following and watching and whatever. And it made total sense for me to share that on YouTube, and I'm not regretting that for a second at all. That was the best decision I could make at that time, for real. My only like real thought process behind all that is that I'm a little bit sorry that I didn't make even more videos about that. And like in the process itself, because that would teach me so much today. Even if I made videos and I didn't post them on YouTube necessarily, but that experience was tough. The worst thing I've been through my entire life, for sure. And I think I learned something from it.
As a viewer, that was inspirational as fuck. Seriously.
Thanks.
First, like, you're a public person, you know that YouTube it's a talking head. And when you come out with the eye patch, I was like, dude, this guy has huge balls. Like, there's no other way to say it. Your icon. I'll never forget the icon with the patch.
Yeah.
That was epic. That was just a killer move. And why am I bringing this up? This isn't just like random. Last year, not this year, my brother, my big brother, he's like my best friend in the world. He goes to the doctor, to the neurologist, and he comes back and he's like, dude, I have a tumor the size of a grapefruit inside of my head. First of all, obviously, we were all in shock. We were all like, you know, this, how could this happen? You know, he showed me the scanner and everything. And then I remembered, wait a minute, I remember Accurate talked about something like this. And I was able to show all your process to my brother. And thanks to your videos, that just took a huge load off, because he didn't know if he was like, they had to, just same as you, they had to take it out.
Oh.
And he was worried, you know, he was gonna, you know, lose his sight, or, you know, get deaf, or not be able to walk, you know, like he has like, just, he's a little bit older than us, you know, he has 2 kids, but he thought this was the end, you know, like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to work anymore and everything. And I'm pretty sure it's myeloma. It's the same. I think it's the same. Sorry, meningioma. Meningioma. What was yours? Sorry.
Kind of early on in that entire process, I decided to not make my condition and my sickness into an interest of mine. That's not going to be a hobby. I'm not going to think about it more than I need. No. I know that this is going on and it's bad and I'm going to go through this and that, but I didn't do a lot of research at all. And now when you ask me what it was called, I don't even know. Acoustic frenoma? Frenoma? Something like that. I don't even know, because I decided I'm not gonna care too much about this, because in that case, you know, I'm a nerdy type of person. So whenever I set my mind into something, if I'm gonna research something, I'm gonna research it fully. And in this case, it just made more sense to not research it at all. Just leave this thing to the doctors and to the Swedish healthcare system. And thankfully, everything went really, really well now, a few years later. But, you know, I went through it, and how it affected my life and what I went through, that's the important part for me. What it was, how big it was, what it was called, and how bad it could have been. I don't even want to go there, because that's scary stuff. I don't know if I said it flat out on a video, but I was really scared for my life. I thought this thing could kill me. And it could have killed me if things went south, but it didn't. And I'm sorry to hear about your brother, but I'm also kind of glad to hear that something I made an impact in any type of way at all. That's cool.
It was huge. Maybe like, just like you said, sometimes we make something and we don't know the impact it has on other people's lives. And at least for me and my family, dude, we held on to those videos, because like, look, he had the same brain tumor, and look at him, he's back, and he's scratching, you know, apparently not very good at it, but
no, not really. But I mean, what I'm trying to say is that there was more parts here that I didn't really show on video, partly because it was too tough. I mean, the first time when I came home from after the surgery with the eye patch and the whole crooked face and everything, and I tried to play on machine, and my right arm just didn't follow. I couldn't keep beat at all. I couldn't actually brush my teeth because I couldn't, like, stupid thing to mention, but I could move my arm, sure, but I wasn't like in control over how much force I put into anything. So when I brushed my teeth, you know, all of a sudden the arm just went haywire and like smacked my mouth open. You know, a lot of things happened and a lot of things could have gone a lot worse. But I had this freaking walker that I walked with for weeks, and I had a cane for months. I mean, I was pretty badly damaged by the whole thing. And now I'm still crooked in my face is still a little bit wonky, and I'm permanently deaf on one ear. Other than that, I'm good. I've talked to people who went through this, like your brother and other people too, that kind of reached out to me and asked me how things went and also to thank me for stuff. Some people gets it way worse and some people gets it way easier. It's kind of a roll of the dice. And I had a rough time, but I'm happy to be out of that. And I'm happy to hear that your brother is fine. That's awesome.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man. Dude, I want to thank you so much for sharing with us today, man. I feel absolutely privileged, and I'm thankful that my YouTube journey has led me to meet my heroes, basically.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. I had an awesome time, and it was really good chatting with you. I appreciate this. I like this a lot.
To everybody watching, thank you so much. I hope you found this video useful or at least entertaining, and I'll see you again next week. Have a great one.